Compliance Life details the journey to and in the role of a Chief Compliance Officer. How does one come to sit in the CCO chair? What are some of the skills a CCO needs to successfully navigate the compliance waters in any company? What are some of the top challenges CCOs have faced, and how did they meet them? These questions and many others will be explored in this new podcast series. The Compliance Life is hosted by Tom Fox, and each month he'll present the story of one CCO through 4 episodes. The Compliance Life is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, back again with Kortney Nordrum for episode 3 in this month's series on the Compliance Life. For those who did not join us for episode 2, we ended with Kortney in tears in New York City after working a month or 6 weeks at Big Law, and a lovely conversation with her husband where he says, "Get thee back to Minnesota and do what you love." So, Kortney, did you go back to Minnesota, and tell us about what you did when you got back?
I did. I went back to Minnesota. I stayed for the Thanksgiving Day parade, and then I went back to Minnesota. And what I did was I started my own practice, which is something that people do either because they want to or because they don't really have a lot of other options. And with the economy the way it was at the time, there weren't a ton of other options. I also had niche experience with animal law. So animal law is basically any practice of a law that involves animals. They're not hiding the ball in the name. But I thought, you know what I can do is I can spin up an animal law practice, and I will advise people who are getting divorced how to split their dog in half so that they can both have custody, or how people can make sure that their pets are taken care of after they pass away. And I did that. And I reached out to my contacts in the animal law space. And instead of advising people on trusts and divorces, I was inundated with crazy cat ladies. So it's not that all people who have cats are crazy, but I was getting the kind of crazy cat ladies who were getting kicked out of their apartment for having 22 cats. And then they would call me saying that they can't get rid of their cats because they are reincarnated versions of their mother, sister, aunt, brother, etc. So legitimate crazy cat ladies. And while it feels good to help people, crazy cat ladies oftentimes don't have a lot of money, and so I was making just over $0, which doesn't feel nice when the student loans come calling. And so I started looking for work. While the animal law piece was fulfilling, animal lawyers like to say they are the only lawyers whose clients are always innocent. It was not going to pay the bills. So a friend of mine worked at Thomson Reuters and knew of a position they had open there and recommended me for the position. I thought it looked like fun, and so I applied. 2 weeks later, I was walking into Eagan, Minnesota to Thomson Reuters to be some sort of rep. I don't even remember. It was NAR, National Account Rep or something. And what you should know is Thomson Reuters in Eagan, Minnesota employs 800 lawyers. So in the Twin Cities, we pump out about 1,000 lawyers a year between the 3 law schools, and Thomson Reuters employs like 800 of them at a time. And if you're not aware, Thomson Reuters is the owner of Westlaw, the holy grail, in my opinion, of research. So I got to basically work at Thomson Reuters for a couple of years, and by the end of it, my position was flying around to the AmLaw 100, so the largest 100 law firms in the US, and talking to their CFOs and presidents and managing partners about cost recovery and savings. So it was actually great. I got to talk to people, I got to travel, I got to present really fun PowerPoints, but and the pay was good. But it was one of those things where I was still unfulfilled. Like my soul wasn't hurting. I didn't feel like I was trading in who I was to do this work. I believed in the work, and the people I worked with were kind and caring individuals. But I wasn't feeling like this was my calling. This was what I need to do in my life. Randomly, the person in the cube next to me, shout out to Tina Peglow, told me that her brother was recruiting for a job. And that job was to run social media at this association. Well, turns out it was HCCA and SCCE. And she said, my brother called me, wanted to know if I was interested in this job. I'm not, but you like talking and social media, so are you interested? I said, yes, absolutely. Have your brother call me. So 4 days later, I was hired at SCCE. And I started there on December 31st, 2013. And on January 1st, I flew to Las Vegas for a board meeting with them. So it was a bit of trial by fire.
And now, a message from our sponsor.
So as I recall, Kortney, you started first the SCCE blog and later the SCCE podcast. I was wondering what led you to start those. Were those initiatives you either brought to SCCE or you developed? And what was the experience like recognizing that they are different types and styles of social media interaction and engagement?
So yes, you're right. When I was hired, there was the idea already that SCCE should have a blog. And so part of why I was hired was to help start the blog and get it up and running. And that included everything from like WordPress, designing it, doing all of the back end. Like that was all on me. What is it going to look like? What is it going to feel like? How is it going to link? All of that fun stuff. And then initially I was the only person writing for the blog. And I will say, while I started these things, Adam Turtletown kind of took them to where they are today. So I started them and planted the seed, and he watered it and made it grow into something bigger than the sum of its parts. So I want to give him credit for that. But initially the blog was just writing, and it was 400 words on this, that, or the other. And we were really using it to fill the niche because at the time, Twitter was probably at the height of its popularity and still had the 140 character limit. And we had our magazine articles, which were a couple of thousand words. And so there wasn't a lot of space being taken up by short but meaningful snippets of information. And so it was a really targeted effort to say something without writing a law review article or writing an exhaustive article, but still providing value and information. And so we quickly realized that the blog plus social media, so promoting the blog on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, etc., increased engagement. I don't even know. I'm sure I have the number somewhere. It's probably like 300%. It was like, it went through the roof. So after doing the blog for a year and a half, you interviewed me for one of your first podcasts. I don't even remember which one it was, but we were in the basement of the Aria at a CEI, and you grabbed me and you had this little microphone, and we talked about social media, which is something I still talk about to this day. And I got to be on the podcast, and I felt like a movie star. And you and I started talking, and as we were talking, I think we both became convinced. You convinced me that podcasts were the wave of the future. And this was probably, oh my goodness, Tom, 2015, 2016. It's been a while. And so I took that back to SCCE and I said, we got to start a podcast. We got to start a podcast. We got to start a podcast. And for a while it was no, we don't. And then after, I think I probably worked on Roy for like a year. And finally he relented. He was like, just buy the microphone and talk to people and leave me alone. And so I did. And so we launched the Compliance Perspectives podcast with me being very nervous behind a microphone and interviewing friends I had made along the way. So I reached out to people who I knew would be friendly interview topics and really tried to just have conversations. And I will tell you, the early podcasts are kind of awful. And it's because I realized now, or I realize now, that they weren't as organic as they should have been. And so I was trying to script everything because I'm a planner and I like to not be surprised. And so I was trying to script a conversation instead of have a conversation. By the time I realized that, however, I was already at Deluxe and nobody was giving me a podcast. And so all of that knowledge for nothing. But the podcast also, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I wouldn't say for nothing because it seems to me, and you've said this several times, this is where you found your true calling. And from my perspective, at that point, your calling seemed to be evangelizing for compliance. And you evangelized through the blog. You evangelized later through the podcast. You evangelized through going to conferences and later being a well-known and well-received speaker at the conferences on your use of social media and a wide variety of other topics. But I really wanted to use that question, Kortney, as a way to introduce the topic of you finding your passion, you finding your true calling in compliance. How did that come to you, and perhaps even why do you think it came to you at this point in your career?
Yeah, so it was, I was seeking up until that point something that not only I liked to do, but I felt good about doing and kept me interested. Tom, you've known me long enough. I am smart and capable, but I'm also fairly ADD. And so I want new challenges and I want new ways to think about things and learn things. And I'm a strong extrovert. So through SCCE, you are 100% correct when you describe it as, I learned that I love to evangelize and talk about compliance and ethics. It was probably after I attended, they have what's called academies. All of the employees get to go to them. And it's really a soup to nuts, like 3 or 4 days talking deep compliance. And that was the first time I got into the 7 elements, what it means, and what it means to be a compliance officer and the kind of responsibilities. So I had kind of touched compliance from the outside until then. And then after having that experience, I saw the light. And I remember exactly, I can tell you the exact moment. It was during an exercise where the trainer was acting as the CEO, and we had to act as the compliance officer, and we had to ask for money, and money that wasn't necessarily in the budget, and money that the CEO did not want to give us. And it was just this exercise, and being trained in mock trial and having the debate experience and being an extrovert, I got up there and I basically said, I need money and it's going to save you money and here's why, and boom, boom, boom. And it was 30 seconds. And I sat down and the trainer said, you're the best at that I've seen in however many years. Like, you need to do, like, that was how you do this. And I went, you're right. That is what I should be doing. Like, that is who I am. It's what I want to do. And so from there, it was really just following my passion to talk about compliance and to engage people on compliance in an interesting way, and hopefully in a way that lets others in on the secrets. As lawyers, we are usually raised in the legal community where everything is a secret and I'm not going to tell you, and this is mine. Compliance is the opposite. Compliance is we just share and share alike and share very freely with each other. What works, what doesn't work. Here's troubles I'm having. Can I get some advice? And the combination of the culture in the compliance profession, as well as the appeal to the hardcore rule follower in me, coupled with my personality, really led me to realize, I don't want to say an epiphany because that would be pushing it. That would be hyperbole and a little ridiculous, but me to realize very clearly that this is the path I want to be on. And this is where I want to be going and what I want to be doing.
Into the CCO chair. So Kortney, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Me too, Tom.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. Thank you again for listening to this episode of The Compliance Life. I hope you'll join me again next week where I take up another episode within The Compliance Life. The Compliance Life is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. If you would like to be featured on The Compliance Life, please give me an email at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. Also, if you like this series, please give us a rating on iTunes. Any review and rating would definitely help get the word out about the latest addition to the Compliance Podcast Network. Thanks again.